Have you ever sat in a room with your own children and felt completely invisible? They used to run to you for advice. Your words used to carry weight. Your presence meant comfort, guidance, safety. But now, they cut you off mid-sentence. They speak to you like you don't understand. Sometimes they don't speak at all. You wonder, what changed? Did I do something wrong? Did I love too much or not enough? And then a deeper ache begins to settle in. Do they even respect me anymore? If you've ever asked yourself that, please know you're not alone. Millions of parents silently carry the heartbreak of feeling overlooked by their own adult children. But silence doesn't have to be your story. Because the truth is, respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you reclaim. And it starts with a shift, not in them, but in you. In this video, we're going to walk through 6 powerful actions you can take when your grown children no longer show you the respect you deserve. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but from a place of quiet strength, deep love, and unshakable self-worth. Because you're still the parent, you're still wise, and your value has never expired. Let's begin. Action 1. Stop chasing their approval. One of the most painful patterns many older parents fall into is trying too hard to please their grown children. It often starts small. Maybe you say yes when you really mean no. You rearrange your day just to fit their schedule. You offer help even when you're exhausted. You stay silent when they speak disrespectfully just to keep the peace. And deep down, there's a hope. If I just do a little more, maybe they'll finally appreciate me again. Maybe they'll respect me like they used to. But let me tell you a hard truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Why? Because approval isn't earned by shrinking yourself. Respect doesn't come from giving more than you have. It comes from standing firm in your worth, even when it's uncomfortable. I once met a retired nurse named Evelyn. She had raised 3 children as a single mother, working long nights and sacrificing nearly everything to give them a better life. But in her 70s, she noticed a shift. Her kids stopped calling. When they did visit, they were impatient. They criticized the way she lived, her old routines, the way she spoke, even how she dressed. And Evelyn? She took it quietly. She told herself, they're just stressed. They're busy. I should be understanding. So she cooked their favorite meals when they came over. She offered to babysit their kids, even when her back hurt. She agreed with their opinions, even when they went against her values. She thought, maybe if I give more, love more, they'll come around. But they didn't. Instead, they pulled further away. They took more, expected more, and respected her less. It wasn't until Evelyn decided to stop chasing their approval that things began to change. She started saying no. She stopped offering help when she didn't have the energy. She began speaking up when something bothered her. At first, her children were surprised, even offended. They didn't recognize this new version of their mother. But over time, something powerful happened. They started listening. They started showing up with a different attitude. They began to realize, Mom has a voice, and we've been ignoring it. You see, respect begins not when others decide to give it to you, but when you decide you're worthy of it, no matter who does or doesn't acknowledge it. So if your children don't respect you, the first step isn't demanding more from them. It's demanding more from yourself. Don't twist yourself into knots trying to win their affection. Instead, stand tall in your truth. Say what you mean. Say no when you must. And most of all, live in a way that honors your own dignity. Because once you begin to truly respect yourself, others, including your children, will have no choice but to adjust how they see you. Action 2. Don't argue. Lead by example. When your children start dismissing your words, interrupting you, or brushing off your concerns, it's natural to want to fight back. After all, you spent a lifetime teaching them values, guiding their choices, being their anchor, and now they speak to you like you don't know anything? Your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to raise your voice, to remind them of the sacrifices you made and the wisdom you've gained. But here's something that may surprise you. Arguing rarely earns respect. In fact, the more you argue, the more you reinforce their belief that they're in charge now. And that's exactly the trap many older parents fall into, not realizing that by engaging in the conflict, they're giving away their power. Respect is not won through volume. It's won through presence, through calm, through quiet strength. I once knew a man named Harold. He had been a successful engineer, a natural leader, the kind of man others listened to when he spoke. But in his retirement, Harold noticed something painful. His grown children no longer saw him the same way. They interrupted him during conversations. They brushed off his advice with a laugh. They even joked that he was stuck in the past. At first, Harold pushed back. He reminded them of all he had done, putting them through school, helping them buy their first cars, teaching them how to work with their hands. But the more he defended himself, the more they rolled their eyes. The more he tried to explain, the less they listened. And one day, something clicked. He realized he had spent his whole life teaching others how to lead, not by shouting, but by being someone worth listening to. So Harold made a shift. He stopped arguing. When his children challenged his opinions, he didn't push back. He paused, listened, then calmly spoke, not to win the moment, but to express his truth with quiet confidence. He didn't need to be loud, because he started carrying himself like someone who didn't need their approval to know his worth. And over time, his children noticed. They began asking him questions again. They began listening more because he stopped trying to control the conversation and started modeling the dignity they had forgotten. Here's the thing. When you respond to disrespect with arguments, you're stepping into their chaos. But when you respond with grace, with self-assurance, with calm authority, you rise above it. And that sends a message far louder than any lecture ever could. Remember, you're not trying to win an argument. You're trying to teach your children what real respect looks like by the way you treat yourself, even when they don't. So the next time your child raises their voice or rolls their eyes, don't match their energy. Stay rooted. Speak with intention. Show them, without a single word of defensiveness, that you still hold your ground. Because dignity isn't something they can give you. It's something you already have. You just have to show it. Action 3. Withdraw your emotional dependence. One of the hardest, most unspoken shifts in later life is realizing that the people you once lived for, your children, no longer live for you. When your children were young, they needed you for everything. You were their center of gravity, their comfort, their constant. But now, they've grown into adults with busy lives, demanding careers, partners, children of their own, And somewhere along the way, without even meaning to, you may have begun leaning on them emotionally, waiting for their calls, craving their attention, tying your happiness to their presence. And when they don't show up, when the phone stays silent, when the visits grow fewer and the conversation shorter, it can feel like heartbreak, like being forgotten. But here's a truth most parents don't talk about. Emotional dependence breeds emotional distance. You see, the more your children sense that their attention is the only thing keeping you afloat, the more they begin to feel pressure, like your happiness rests on their shoulders. And instead of drawing them closer, that pressure often drives them away. I once met a woman named Teresa. She was a widow in her 70s, soft-spoken, warm-hearted, a woman who had poured her entire life into raising her 3 children. When her youngest moved out, she hoped the emptiness would fade quickly. But it didn't. She waited for their calls every weekend. She rearranged her days in hopes one of them might stop by. And when they didn't, she called them instead. Once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week. Just to hear your voice, she'd say. But the more she reached out, the more they pulled back. They answered her calls less. They seemed distracted when she spoke. Eventually, they even started saying things like, "Mom, I just don't have time right now," or "You're being too much." And it devastated her. That's when Teresa decided to make a change. She realized she'd been living in the shadow of her children's lives instead of standing fully in her own. So she stopped waiting. She joined a book club, started painting again, volunteered at the local library. She filled her days with people, passions, and purpose, not because she didn't love her children, but because she finally started loving herself again. And you know what happened? The calls started coming. The visits picked up. Her children began to notice she wasn't just waiting for them to fill her time. She was living, and that made them want to be around her more, not less. Because here's the paradox. The less you emotionally rely on your children, the more freely they give you their love. Not out of guilt, not out of duty, but out of genuine desire to connect. When you stand on your own 2 feet, when you live fully and joyfully, whether they call or not, you become someone they admire, someone they want to know again, someone they look up to, not as a parent needing attention, but as a person they respect. So ask yourself, are you building a life that lights you up, or are you waiting for your children to do it for you? If you want to regain their respect, start by regaining your independence, not just physical, but emotional. Show them you are whole on your own, that your joy is not tied to how often they visit, but to how fully you live. Because nothing earns respect more than quiet, radiant strength. Action 4. Set boundaries and enforce them. One of the most heartbreaking realizations a parent can face is this: the people you love the most may unintentionally hurt you again and again if you don't show them how to treat you. And not because they're cruel, not because they don't love you, but because you've never made it clear where your line is. See, respect isn't just about love. It's about limits. And without boundaries, love alone can't protect you from being overlooked, taken for granted, or disrespected. Many parents, especially as they get older, believe that being easygoing keeps the peace, that staying quiet avoids conflict, that tolerating poor behavior is somehow the price of keeping the family close. But the truth is, Peace built on silence is not peace at all. It's emotional erosion, and the longer you allow it, the harder it is to repair. Let me share the story of a woman named Dolores. Dolores was a warm, generous grandmother, the type of woman who baked for everyone, never missed a birthday, and always said yes, even when it cost her comfort, time, or dignity. But as the years went by, her adult children began to expect more and appreciate less. They would cancel plans last minute, speak to her curtly, drop off their kids for babysitting with no warning, assuming she'd say yes because she always did. She smiled through it all. She told herself it was fine. But deep down, Dolores felt invisible. Not a respected matriarch, but a convenience. Until one day during a family dinner, her son raised his voice at her over something small. And for the first time in decades, Dolores didn't smile. She didn't apologize. She didn't retreat to the kitchen. She looked him in the eye and said softly but firmly, "I will not be spoken to like that. Not by you. Not in my home. If you raise your voice again, I will leave the table." The room fell silent because for the first time, she had drawn a line. That was the beginning of a shift, not overnight, but real. She started saying no to last-minute demands. She stopped tolerating sarcasm disguised as jokes. She began choosing peace of mind over family politics. And guess what? Her children started listening, started asking instead of assuming, started showing up on time, speaking with care, and thanking her more often. Because when she stopped letting them cross the line, they finally learned where the line was. Here's what you need to remember. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It's about teaching them how to love you properly. It's not about being harsh. It's about being honest. It's not about building walls. It's about building doors that only open with respect. Boundaries can sound like, "I'm happy to help, but I need advance notice. I love you, but I won't be part of conversations where I'm insulted. If you continue to speak to me that way, I will end the call." And here's the key. You must enforce them, because a boundary without action is just a suggestion. And people, yes, even your grown children, will test your limits until they know you're serious. The beauty is, once you begin, you don't need to explain or defend your boundaries. You only need to uphold them. Over time, they'll learn. And more than that, they'll respect you more for it. Because deep down, even children who resist boundaries crave them. They want to know where the lines are. They want to know who you are. And when you show them, they may not thank you immediately, but they will adjust. They will grow, and they will begin to see you not as someone they can walk over, but as someone they must rise to meet. Action 5. Live with purpose beyond parenthood. For decades, your identity may have revolved around being a parent. You were the caretaker, the problem solver, the steady presence behind every homework assignment, scraped knee, and life lesson. And even as your children grew up and started their own lives, that instinct to give, to nurture, to sacrifice never really left you. But here's the truth. Few people say out loud, once your children are grown, your purpose must expand, or you risk disappearing into their shadows. You are not just someone's mother or father. You are a whole person with dreams that still matter, wisdom that still shines, and time that still has meaning. When children sense that your entire world revolves around them, they don't feel flattered. They feel pressured. They pull away not because they don't love you, but because they sense that your happiness is tied to their behavior. That's a heavy burden for anyone to carry, even more so for adult children trying to navigate their own lives. So the question is, what brings you joy outside of them? When was the last time you woke up excited for something that had nothing to do with your family? Have you rekindled old passions? Started writing that memoir you always dreamed about? Tried painting, gardening, volunteering, or traveling to places you once only saw in books? Living with purpose isn't about being busy. It's about being fulfilled. It's about finding something that makes your soul come alive again, something that gives you meaning, even if no one's watching. I knew a gentleman named Harold, a retired engineer and devoted father of 3. When his youngest left for college, Harold fell into a quiet sadness. The house was still. The phone barely rang, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know who he was anymore. But one day, while cleaning out the attic, he found his old sketchbooks, drawings he had made before marriage, before kids, before life got busy. Something stirred inside him. That afternoon, he picked up a pencil. The next day, he bought some paper. A month later, he enrolled in an art class at the local community center. Fast forward a year, Harold had his first gallery showing. His children came, not because they felt guilty,